Hey, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Sean.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on. So for the audience, if you have not heard of Abe, uh, first of all, Abe and I know each other because we're in the same mastermind. But he's got a pretty impressive resume or rap sheet, depending on how you want to say it. But Abe's the owner of XP Strategy, which he founded in 2018. Prior to XP Strategy, he was an Amazon seller from 2009 to 2018, so a real OG. Prior to that, 2001 to 2009, he was selling his products on his own website and also around different parts of the e-commerce landscape. And prior to that, he sold products through print advertising. So, Abe, welcome to the show. You've got a wealth of knowledge, and it's an honor to have somebody with so much knowledge be willing to come and share it. So, thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for that very, very gracious introduction. I'm pretty sure that even though I've described my history 100 times, I think you just did it better than all the other 100 times. I should like bring you along when I have to speak somewhere.
You know what? Yeah, just clip this, and you can put it in the beginning and be like, "Hey, this is Abe," and then it'll just be me introducing you. It'll be
Yeah,
great.
don't take my word for it. Here's what Sean has to say about me. Perfect.
Yeah. So, Abe, I mean, I think everyone, everyone listening to this, everyone watching this, will be very interested to hear about the evolution because you're somebody who you didn't even have a front row seat. You were a participant in this whole evolution. And so I would love to kind of dive into that with you and maybe understand it from your perspective. Um, so maybe let's start there. How do you think about all this? How do you see the evolution of internet advertising?
So I'll tell you, like you said, I've been doing this a lot longer than most, and I've been through a lot of versions of what we do now. And what that leads me, where that brings me, is a lot of things that people see now that are they consider upheavals are really just a flavor of a thing I've seen a bunch of times. So I have seen laws change and affect a whole sea and ocean of people. It's happened to me several times. I have seen crazy competitors come in and cause, again, its own kind of upheaval. People who don't understand their expenses are as old as business. There are people who don't know how to manage money, but they say, oh, here's a great business. The restaurant business is one of the best examples of that. People look at a box of pasta. They look at the restaurant and say, "Oh, this guy's selling pasta for $16. Oh my God, it's 99% profit. Let's go." And the same thing happens with all of the other places where you can sell things. People look at the cost of they look at a product that sells for $20 on Amazon. They look on Alibaba and it's like $1.08. And they say, oh my God, this is 94% profit. There is no amount of expenses that can make this not worthwhile. And then they find out that there is indeed an amount of expenses that make it not work. But
Yeah.
those things have been around forever. And when we see it, it's just another version of the next thing. Whether, like you said, whether it's hijackers or people who are aggressive on price or people who don't understand what they're doing, all of these challenges are another flavor or another cycle of thing I've seen. And that allows me to be cool when the thing happens. So when there's an announcement of a policy change, okay, I remember when this similar policy change happened 5 years ago and 7 years ago and 9 years ago, and we're all still here.
Yeah, okay. Um, I mean, first of all, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that there have been a lot of different things that have sent the Amazon industry into upheaval. Is there anything that comes to mind very recently? Like any changes that have come up that people have really made a big deal of that you feel like you've seen before?
Um, I can give so many examples. All right, so uh, let's think for a second. Oh, thinking about specific things as opposed to ideas is always, I have to shift gears a little bit. But
Hmm.
if we think, for example, about regulations that have changed how we do things, which are things that come up now. Right
Mhm.
now, I imagine that people will be watching this for many years, but for whoever is not watching this right after it's being recorded, it's 2025. The current president just announced tariffs that are off the charts, and it's affecting everybody that has to buy merchandise from China and even all over the world. It is
Mhm.
an upheaval, but there are a lot of people who don't realize that exactly the same thing happened exactly 5 years ago. There are people who have a large majority of sellers have been in business for less than 5 years or were very small 5 years ago. And this is actually the second time the Trump administration has put tariffs on goods coming from China. And the people who were around and were affected and got through it are very much more prepared. I have a brand that I work with that does 8 figures a year on Amazon, besides whatever they do off of Amazon. They knew that when Trump said he's going to reset trade with China, that tariffs were very likely to be coming. And what did they do? They put a year's worth of inventory on the water in January. They put it. They have literally like probably 200 containers worth of goods in January, and they were leveraged up to their eyeballs. And what's happening now is they have all their goods at the right price. And as everyone else is slowing down what they're importing, he is rolling along. He is up 50% year over year from a starting level of 8 figures. And he's got the goods for it. Now, again, he is leveraged up to here. It's a scary bet to have to take. But the interest he's paying on his goods that he didn't sell yet is far lower than anybody is paying in tariffs.
Yeah, that's a fair take. I mean, that's something that a lot of people probably wish they did right about now. Um,
But this is
and
this is not even the first time. Even 5 years before that, a thing that didn't affect e-commerce people as much, but there was a point in time where manufacturing apparel in China was much cheaper than it is now, believe it or not. And there was a point where over the course of 18 months, China started to impose the minimum level of regulations to protect their people, and costs for apparel went up 50, 60%. All of the people that I know in the apparel business were booking planes to Vietnam and Cambodia and Egypt. And that is why a good amount of what you buy now is made in Vietnam and Bangladesh and other countries, even before any of this happened. This is a result of the 12 years ago sea change in costs. So now, living in the moment is absolutely unpleasant. So if you're the person that has to actually buy and sell a thing in this moment, yes, very, very difficult. You are frozen or paralyzed or choking. But larger picture, which again, I'll say it 100 times. Yes, it's much easier to talk about it than to actually have to operate. But these things are cyclical and they will happen again in X amount of years. Just be ready when you see the smoke signals or the first hints of it happening.
yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of people are just so tired of hearing about tariffs at this point. It's like tariffs, tariffs, tariffs. I've already got tariff fatigue, and don't even I don't currently own an Amazon brand. And so I look at this and I say to myself, man, this is brutal. When there's any kind of upheaval in the manufacturing space, it sounds like the number one play is consider additional options. Is that something that you saw pan out for people last time, or was there some other playbook that they went through?
There's
It's really interesting.
there's no standard playbook. What comes out is the people who are creative and flexible, they turn out to be winners. And the people who are going according to the existing playbook have no idea what to do when something goes off script.
Mm,
So, as an example, when COVID first hit in 2020, there were a lot of businesses who were destroyed. They had to close up shop. People who were selling party supplies and fancy dresses and anything that had to do
mhm.
with people coexisting,
Yeah.
anything where people were in close quarters, all demolished. But at the
Mhm.
same time, there were immediately people in the sign business that started making this stand 6 feet apart stickers. They made a mountain of money. It was all of a sudden Christmas for like 14 months. There were people who were resourceful enough to get their hands on PPE equipment, when there was no PPE. They were resourceful and
Mm,
flexible enough to get PPE equipment in, and they would get in goods, and they would sell $1 million in a day, literally $1 million in a day. In
mhm.
6 weeks, they were making generational money without an exaggeration.
Yeah,
These were people who had access to resources that manufactured fabric, and there was just one short step to making these PPE things. They immediately realized that this is not a week, this might be months, and they did what they did the things to capitalize. And being flexible and being innovative will forever be the thing that turns challenges into opportunities.
that's fantastic. And I mean, honestly, I think that's a really, really well put point, which is that if you're gonna if you're gonna just fold because something didn't go according to plan, you probably didn't have that strong of a business to start with. Um, I wanna ask about a different challenge because something that is maybe a little bit more, and I know you have a take on this, so I'm kind of setting you up here. But people are always talking about Amazon fees going up and Amazon taking a bigger slice of the pie. Um, how might you talk to somebody about that situation and that opportunity? Because I think I've heard you talk about this before, but probably I've only seen it in text. So I'd love to hear your position on, you know, Amazon keeps taking a bigger piece of the pie. What do I do? What do you say
Yeah.
to that?
So there's a general answer to this. The general answer is stop complaining. So realize that fees will always change, and it is absolutely going to be something that's true that next year there will be more fees going up, and you're going to be complaining again. And if you are in that mode of always, if you have no room for those increases, like you said, you don't have a healthy business. But
Mhm.
the other framing is that in most cases, Amazon is probably proving this a little bit untrue, but in most cases, even after fees go up, it is still the cheapest possible way to do a thing that they are offering a service for. So any of Amazon's FBA fees are much cheaper than it'll cost you to do a thing yourself. To ship a thing from here to there in 12 hours, you will never get it done, not even for 10x the price. So now, understanding that is a good framework for all of this. Of course, you still have to operate in a competitive landscape with people and their prices. Yes, I get all of that. But the bigger thing is have the mental frame that Amazon is not doing this to stick it to you. There's no person at Amazon that wakes up and says, how am I going to screw sellers today? What thing can I
Mhm.
do to stick a needle in their arm? Like nobody is thinking like that. They have a cost structure, they have a fee structure, they have expenses, and they're trying to offer a service. Amazon very actively wants a healthy and vibrant third party platform. It gives diversity of offerings. It lets Amazon be very flexible as trends move, and they don't have to worry about POs and purchase cycles. It lets them offer things that have been discontinued. Like every kind of good thing about variety exists when you have a healthy third party marketplace, and Amazon is well aware of that. So they are not actively trying to do things that harm those third party sellers. They have a lot of other considerations besides that. Doesn't mean that they can do anything for them. But the big picture, they're just trying to run a business and all the things that go along with it.
Yeah. And I think your point of like, look, if you tried to do this yourself, you couldn't, and if you could, it would be 10x the price Amazon charges you. That's a very, very helpful context that a lot of people just completely forget about, US
No,
consumers take it for granted that things will just show up at your house 12 hours after you order them. I've lived
sometimes
in a lot of
less,
different
but yeah.
places. Yeah. I got jeans in 6 hours the first month I lived in the United States. And I was like, this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen.
Listen, I've traveled and Amazon will get something to my hotel in 6 hours. Oh, I forgot to pack a thing. Doesn't matter. It does not matter that I forgot to pack a thing. Amazon's getting it. Amazon's getting it to me quick. One of the things I like to do every occasionally is like scroll through all the addresses that are in my past addresses list, and it serves like a photo album of sorts. When I can say, "Oh, remember when I was here and needed a thing," and it shows the places I've been.
Yeah. remember the time my bestie Amazon just sorted out this huge problem I had? Yeah,
Yes.
it's a big deal.
Right. So, yeah. Now, listen. Of course, there are going to be people who say, "Well, I can ship cheaper than this." Like, okay, you are not the majority of sellers, and in that case, you actually have FBM, and you have also uh, the oh my god, you also have seller fulfilled Prime. So if you actually can do it cheaper than Amazon, Amazon has a way to give you all the business and take all the work off of their head. So by all means, do it less expensively than Amazon can.
Yeah,
If you
yeah.
can
I
get
mean,
things to shoppers in 1 to 2 days like they can, they will give you a Prime badge if you can do it consistently and go run with it.
yeah. I mean, good luck, but you definitely can do it. Um, so when it comes to like, I want to keep going back in time here. Um, in the early days of Amazon, could you talk to me about that? Was that because I mean, I got on to selling products on Amazon in 2017. So you've got this whole wealth of experience. And when that happened was when Amazon advertising really started to pick up. And so I kind of joined at the beginning of a trend and I jumped on that trend pretty quickly. But what I'm wondering is what about, the times before Amazon advertising was this big thing, this big part of the ecosystem that it is now?
So you're missing an entirely different sea change that happened around the same time, which is the ability for Chinese sellers to sell on the Amazon marketplace. That also
Oh.
came in the late 20 teens. When I started selling in 2009, 2010, it was me and a few American sellers for any of my product niches. And
Mm,
sourcing, there was no real Alibaba. Alibaba existed, but it was not necessarily easy to source goods from overseas. You actually had to be in business and buy quantities and do the things of being in a business. So those were barriers to selling on Amazon that not a lot of people pushed over. And I actually remember, so we had 5 years or so of selling with a much smaller number of competitors. That's it. My
mm,
competitors that I dealt with on my website just all migrated with me together to Amazon. So I knew all the same names and I knew who all the same players were. It was just, okay, here's Amazon now instead of our own website. It was a known space.
mm.
The changes started to come around 2015. And what happened in 2015? My suppliers, my factory in China, started reducing their minimums. And it took me probably a year to realize that my factory was using me as a guinea pig. There was no helium 10 data. Basically what they would do,
Mm.
my business was accessories for digital cameras and video. So
Okay.
what would happen is whenever there would be a new model of battery that came out, the factory would have no minimums. I mean, there would be a minimum of 20 units. But if I
Mhm.
would buy 20 or 50 or 100 units, they would make it for me and I would sell it and it would be no problem. I reorder 20, 50, or 100, no problem. As soon as I reorder 1,000 or 3,000, they know
Mm.
this model has traction in the marketplaces, and I would see the brand that I know my factory had creating a listing on Amazon. They would only do it after I was their guinea pig and do it. It took me a while to figure it out. I had to figure out who this person was I didn't realize, and I had to figure out the relationship between me reordering and them creating a listing. Um,
Wow.
but what happened was this is the place where innovation came. I started bundling accessories that were not made in that factory. So I would bundle
Oh.
a battery and a case for a camera. Now, those are things actually that shoppers want together, and he couldn't do it. So
Mm.
we innovated. And those are the situations when you can say, oh no, my factory is competing against me. I'll never be able to sell for that same price. Or you can say, no, I've got flexibility and I can do things that they can't. Find the
Mm.
thing you can do that somebody can't, and that's your value offering.
Oh, it's really interesting. Um, did you ever ask the factory directly if they were doing it, or did you just let them go and do what they were doing?
Um, we never asked because what answer are we possibly going to get? Like,
Hmm.
that's a conversation where there's no answer you can possibly give. What are they going to say? Yes, we're using you as guinea pigs. They're not going to actually say that out loud. So it's either going
Yeah.
to be a denial or a non answer. We just knew that it was happening. There
Hmm.
was one case where they stole our images. And in that case, we said, listen, We know everything you do to us, but actually stealing our images is the place where it has to stop. If you don't stop, we're
Mm,
going to stop buying from you. And he took off all their images the next day. We knew
wow.
we knew exactly who the person stealing our images was, and they took it off. That was the only time they ever acknowledged that they were doing this to us.
Wow. I mean, that is very interesting.
Yes.
Um, and prior to the sellers, like Chinese sellers getting on Amazon, was it Amazon not letting them on? Was it the Chinese government blocking them, or was it something else?
Um, I think I don't know exactly. I mean, I wasn't the Chinese seller trying to get on and not getting on, so I can't speak for
Yeah.
what it was. But
Hmm.
there was a general accepted structure of business in which the manufacturer and the seller to the consumer are different entities. That's how it has
Mm.
always been. A person who opens a storefront in retail or they open a storefront on the website and they're buying things from places. There were no
Hmm.
factory stores. There's no like 9,000 Nike shops or there's no 9,000 factory stores of Lululemon or whatever it might be. It would be that
Hmm.
a manufacturer would make a product, sell it to a store, and then the store sells it. That was the dynamic which existed forever. Amazon at some point facilitated and encouraged factories to sell directly. And that's when it happened.
Mm. Interesting.
Also I think that as the internet developed, the
Hmm.
things of selling did become easier. So things of importing and seller of record and corporate aspects of selling all became easier. Credit card processing and bank transfers, all of those evolved gradually, and there's a point where it became feasible.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
Um, I want to talk to you about selling on your website prior to getting onto Amazon.
sure.
Um, what, how did you even think to start selling on a website in 2001? Like I'm thinking about that time, just like it wasn't that common that people were selling things on the internet back then. So I just, so interested.
So if you were not selling, you probably wouldn't think of doing it. That wasn't the
Hmm.
natural evolution. But if you're in business to sell, which I already was at that point, I started selling in 1991.
Hmm.
So the place to show our products to shoppers was in print for a long time. And then as the internet came along, it became the next place to show our products to shoppers. It became an advertising channel. It wasn't a place that to do business that never existed before. It was simply an advertising channel that never existed before. It was the place where we could show our
Mm.
products and get in orders and we could make changes faster and we had color instead of having to pay for a four color insert as opposed to two color or black and white. Everything was color at that point. But we didn't look at it. We just looked at it as the next place to sell things.
Interesting. And how are you finding customers? Were you taking advantage of Google Ads back when it was cheap cost per click? Were
Oh,
you like, yeah, I mean, there's so
so
much.
I have a story you'll like.
Let's
So
go.
the first advertising platform that allowed you to manage bids was a platform called Overture. It was owned by Yahoo. Yeah, you can look up Overture.
All
So
right.
basically, if you wanted to advertise on Yahoo, if you had a Yahoo store, if you had a website that was advertising on Yahoo, you could advertise your products, and there were clicks basically that you would pay for, CPCs and search terms and keywords. Now,
Hmm.
the way that it works now is everything works as a penny up platform. Basically, they will accept the bid, which is 1 penny higher than the next maximum bid whenever we advertise on things. Overture was doing it the other way. They were doing it penny down. So
Whoa.
basically, yeah, exactly. So what happened? One day we were advertising an expensive digital camera, and every time we would raise our bid, the competitor would just be following us and being in front of us. We said we wanted to be number one. My partner changed the bid to $100. He did not understand what would happen. They took our $100 bid and charged us $100. We blew through $6,000 on 60 clicks. Why? Because our competitor was nudging us more. So essentially, the number one competitor could make a $99 bid. We would have to pay $99.01. But because the competitor below them was only $3, they only had to pay $301 with their $99 bid. You understand the mechanics, right?
Whoa.
They take a
Yeah.
bid higher than the next person under you, 1 penny. But for the second guy, they don't take his full bid. They take 1 penny more than the person under.
Wow.
Yes. So we and then we learned, and there was a nuclear explosion in the office when we saw the bill the next day and what ran out, and we realized the competitor
Mhm.
nudged us up. They realized what was happening and pushed us. Said it's never going to happen again. And after that, we were the ones who were just sitting right under them and letting them be number one forever with the
Mhm.
maximum bid that would force them to be number one. As soon as we moved in front of them, we nudged it 2 cents lower. And across 100 keywords, it was fine. It was manageable. But we always
Mhm.
wanted to be number two. We let them be number one while we paid a fraction of our bid, and guaranteed our profitability was multiples of theirs. We knew it. We knew it from what we were able to do.
Yeah. Wow. I
I'll tell you
mean,
something else interesting in terms of history. Did you know that the first CPC limit was $100? The first CPC limit was $100 a click, and within about a month, there were people screaming that they wanted this limit raised. Who wanted the limit raised? The mesothelioma lawyers, because their clicks
uh,
are worth far more than 100. But what happened was the first guy to get to 100, there's no person 101. It's just the
yeah.
first person that bid 100. And they were cemented in front. They were cemented in front for a couple of years before they raised that bid.
Wow, that's an amazing arbitrage opportunity. Because yeah,
Yes.
it's if you have a good opportunity on your hands, it's basically yeah, you're off to the
Right.
races.
I don't.
Yeah.
We wouldn't. Yeah, arbitrage was its own thing that didn't really exist. But yes, nobody
Hmm.
was thinking about reselling those positions that they had in their ad account.
Yeah. Okay. So when you're advertising, you're sending people to your website. Are people even ordering the product, or are you directing them to a retail store?
No, we had a website, and
Hmm.
what would happen was two things. Number one, people would place orders on our website, but the truth is, many people back then were not comfortable putting their credit cards on the internet. So they would call
Mm.
us. We would have a phone number prominent across the top of the page, and a lot of our business would be people calling us to place orders. We had to have something like 48 lines coming into our office just for all the people that would call in.
Wow, that's amazing. And so,
Yes.
did you have full-time staff who were just taking phone orders?
We had about 20 people picking up the phone. Yeah, there's a whole ecosystem
Wow.
of salespeople in like our neighborhood, because you had to be local at the time. There's a whole
Yeah.
ecosystem of people who are just a little bit younger than me that
Hmm.
I fired after a week or after 3 weeks, and I have no idea who they are. They come up to me
Hmm.
now and say, "Abe, do you remember me?" I'm like, "Did I fire you at some point?" I have no idea who they are. The first
Yeah.
question I ask is, "Did I fire you and forget?" And the answer
Oh, wow.
inevitably will be yes. There's a whole world of people I fired within a week, and I don't remember who they are.
Wow. And so they were people who were making sales over the phone for you.
Yeah, but not everybody is good at telephone sales. There is a
Oh,
particular
yeah.
there is a particular skill needed to interact with people over the phone. Not everybody is good on the phone.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, I had a job like that at one point, so I definitely understand the
No,
difference between somebody who's
no,
good and somebody who's not so good.
there's a monotony of answering the same question 700 times a day. Does this come with XYZ? Does it come in a box? Does it come, how long does shipping take? When you have to answer that question dozens or hundreds of times a day, um,
Hmm.
if you're not built for that, you lose your mind. You either are or you aren't. The
Hmm.
people who are good at it, there's enormous opportunity, and the people
Hmm.
who are not, it just doesn't work. There's no in between.
Yeah. I this is a selfish question because, I used to do something kind of similar to that. What did a lot of those people who were good go on to do? Because you can't really be a telephone product salesperson these days, um, the same way you could
So
back then.
a bunch of them went on to be entrepreneurs themselves of one sort
Hmm.
or another, because selling is selling. When you can sell, you can sell. And
Yeah.
some of them actually just continued being an effective salesperson. If you are an effective salesperson, you can generate a lot of income forever, because if you can sell a thing, you can sell a thing. And there will always be a market for a person that can sell a thing. whether you're selling medical devices or digital camera accessories or real estate or wholesale apparel. You pick your business, that's it. Selling is selling.
Hmm.
And they don't
Yeah.
have to worry.
And
They don't have to worry about inventory. They don't have to worry about payroll. They just show up, get somebody to buy the thing they have to offer, and everybody else does everything else.
yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. That somebody said to me a long time ago, because I was in university when the 2008 recession hit. Somebody said to me, look, there's always going to be a market for good salespeople, regardless of basically regardless of what field you're in or what's going on in the economy or anything else, because selling is selling. If you need selling, if you need someone who can sell, there's really, like,
There's
you
very
always have a
few
job.
people.
Yeah.
There's very few people who can sell well.
Hmm.
Inevitably, when I would be looking for a salesperson, if somebody would apply for the job, the first question I ask is, "How are you available? How is your boss not conceding any amount you want and is willing to let you go?" Because I can tell
Hmm.
you now, the best salespeople, they write their own check, like within
Yeah.
any amount of reason, almost up to the full margin that's available. Somebody will try to retain the best salespeople. So my first question when somebody's applying is like, "How are you available?" Just how are you available? Now,
Yeah.
there are situations where a company might go out of business, all their salespeople become available, or there might be a problem with the product they're selling. Again, not there are situations which are not the fault of the salesperson, but a salesperson in a well-functioning organization does not go anywhere. They stay and
Hmm.
they are happy and they are made happy.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the people that I went to university with are now salespeople at various tech companies and have been there for a long time.
Right. They're not interested in going anywhere. They've got their options, they've got their bonuses, they've got a thing to sell, and they are well compensated. And they are also in a zone where they're comfortable. When
Yeah.
when you're in tune with your business and when you're in tune with your prospect base, selling becomes a thing you're comfortable with and it's good.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that makes perfect sense. When it comes to, I'm really enjoying this, like, going back in time thing. I hope you are too, because I really want to talk about print advertising and, how you used it, what you learned from it. Can you talk to us about your experience there? Because that to me is fascinating.
Sure. So ask me a question and I'll give you an answer.
Yeah, okay, that's a good point. So what worked when you did print ads? Because you're kind of placing big bets, like print ads in magazines or
Oh
in
yeah.
newspaper wasn't cheap. You didn't have a dollar cost per click. You had like a placement
We had a
fee
sunk
of
cost.
thousands. Yeah.
Right. So yes, so there would be a placement fee of thousands, but also the all of the measurements were different. So we
Hmm.
could pack a lot of listings onto a page. It was almost like a phone book listing in which we would have
Hmm.
like a little box that said Canon cameras and like 19 digital cameras with 19 prices in like 5-point font. And it was just an
Mm.
experiment to see how small could we get the text to fit the most amount of things on it. And at the same time, we did that. So that's the most opportunities to make sales. At the
Hmm.
same time, one of the things we had to do was to dedicate space to showing we were worth doing business with. So if it's just a wall of text, people will not be comfortable doing business with somebody like that. We had to talk about what makes us special, our quick shipping, our customer service, all of the things that people might be encouraged to purchase with us. And we always tweaked the combination of those things. We actually had to play a dance that we don't have to play right now, which is advertising prices all the way up till the deadline for printing. So what would happen is we were in a dynamic space where we had,
Hmm.
say, 10 competitors. And the reality is, if a product costs $100, you can't just throw numbers out in the air. There's a price that you can afford to sell it at, and you're dancing within pennies. So if we're 99.99, the next person is 99.98, the next person is 99.97. We always wanted to be at that right price, but it was also always gradually changing. So we would get an advance copy of the next month. So if today is April 16th, we would get somewhere between the 15th and the 18th, we would get the advance copy of the May issue of the magazine. And we had to drill into that advanced copy to see what the competitors were doing and react to that with the ad that's going to run in June. Because
Wow.
we had only until the 21st to put in our advertisement for June. So on April 21st, we're putting in the ad for June. We needed the information we got within 48 hours had to turn into an ad. So it was a crazy dance, and I was delivering advertisements at like 5 a.m. of the deadline day.
You sound like a journalist. Uh,
We were doing things like that. One of the advantages I had at the time was I was one of the few people who was actually creating the ad on my own computer and with my own software, as opposed to using like a printing agency. So the benefit was I could run straight to the film printer with my file at 5 a.m. and they would print
oh,
it and get it to the magazine within like 6 hours. Whereas everybody else had a deadline that was 12 hours earlier because they had to get their information to the printing agency. And there's a
mm,
gap. You know,
mhm.
no agency's working at 5 a.m. I can
Yeah.
work for myself at 5 a.m.
Wow. Um,
Yeah.
did that give you an advantage? Like, were you able to get away with something your competitors couldn't?
We did well. I don't think so. We don't have metrics on how the competition is doing. We don't have
Mm.
competitive metrics like we have now, but
Yeah,
we did well. We got a nice amount of business from the advertisements we created. We were comfortable with that.
that's very interesting. And I mean, I feel like I could talk to you for hours about this. One final question on printing. What did you find worked the best? Like, did you have a best ad that you ran and then you just kept running that, or did you keep iterating on, or did you keep trying completely different things? Like when it came to print advertising, what really worked for you?
So we tried a lot. I would say the three most impactful factors when I was running print ads. Number one is figuring out how many pages delivered a diminishing response. So if you run a 2-page advertisement, when somebody goes through the magazine, you actually take up everything that they see as they turn that page. So a two
Mm,
page ad gives you a much better response than having a competitor on the other side of the page from you. Now, in theory, if you have 10 pages, you're flipping page after page, you are imposing and you are more likely to get a conversion. We had to
mhm,
figure out the diminishing return between the expense of every page versus how much business it delivers to us. So that was one of the things which needed experiment. The
mhm,
second thing was always price is number one. That is the lever that gets people to buy. That's it. If you have a better price than the competition, people will buy from you. And that is true all the way till today. That's it.
yeah.
Too low is suspicious, but if you are the lowest, you have a benefit in every single marketplace where you can sell. That's it. And I guess the third thing that was a benefit was we were one of the first people to figure out that selling bundles of things converts better and more profitably than selling individual pieces of things. So
Wow.
that's obvious today. It was not obvious 25 years ago.
I mean, that's so
Right.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So figuring out the best path to get the person to buy a bundle of things, that was always an interesting challenge. And it remains so today. It absolutely, if you have a 1-pack, 2-pack, and 5-pack of a thing you're selling on Amazon, you are spending a lot of time thinking about how to get the person and steer them towards that best combination of units and price.
Hmm. Wow. That is absolutely fascinating. I feel like I just had a bunch of knowledge dropped on me. Um,
Yeah, there's a lot.
so look, I guess as we kind of wrap up here, the one thing I really want to ask is like, do you have a parting uh, thing you want to share with the audience? There's so many different things you've shared, so many amazing stories. Is there something you want to share as like a parting message to the audience?
So I can tell you something which is really relevant to today. It's always been relevant.
Hmm.
Don't do exactly what everybody else does. Find a way to make the things you do your own. So
Hmm.
what right now I run advertising for brands, and One of the things I see is that people will follow someone they saw on the internet. They'll do the things that that someone said, and they'll do a lot of the things that that someone said. The problem is, if you follow those instructions to the T, you will be doing the exact same thing as 904 other people that followed those
Hmm.
instructions to the T. So if you're not customizing things for your business, you're
Hmm.
absolutely going to get less than optimal results. One of the things we really focus on is understanding what makes a brand special and understanding what a brand needs and tailoring the work to that situation. There is no set system. Anyone that has a set system, just run away from that.
Yeah. Okay.
Hopefully you don't have a set system, right? I don't think so.
No,
Okay.
no. I've got a strategy, but it's a pretty flexible strategy or methodology, whatever we call it.
Yeah, listen, you take what comes in and you make adjustments. And
Yeah.
that's the other thing that always has to happen. Don't stick to that strategy no matter what. Just take what
Hmm.
comes in and make adjustments.
Yeah. Well, look, Abe, where can people find you? Where can they find you if they want to learn more?
All right, so I've got a website, which is xpstrategy.com. The other place that people find me a lot is LinkedIn. I post there and I post all the things that pop into my head, end up written out as little bits of posts on LinkedIn. So you can see how I think, and it's a great place to get in touch with me if you want to work together or learn more.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. This was honestly fascinating for me. So,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
it was my pleasure. I don't often get asked about the print part of the business history, so remembering the deadline parts of things was definitely interesting for me. I appreciate that.
yeah, it was fascinating to me. So I'm surprised more people don't ask. Well, look, thanks for being here. Thanks everyone for watching. And yeah, see you soon.
See you later.